Because now the season's over, I guess find a new hobby. So I figure I want to start tagging up. So I got this can of paint here. So I'm going to kind of put the hood up and shake it up. Welcome to Section 420, Talkin Yankees. Well, ding dong, the season's dead. And of course, we all know right now, Yankees eliminated from the ALDS, lose Game 4 in a lackluster fashion after they kind of gave you some hope there in Game 3 there, and then come out flat in Game 4 there. So really disappointing end to the season. I mean, all endings are disappointing, but especially this one there. So we'll kind of do a bit of a post-mortem there, both games and 3 and 4. Last episode here on YouTube and on TV, we kind of focused on the first 2 games. So that episode was kind of in between the series. I was shifting back to New York. Well, so we all know what happened in New York. It wasn't good, but we'll still look at everything, kind of analyze, who was good, who was bad, what moves are good, what moves are bad, the whole thing there. So we kind of a little dual eventing. I know you can't really sugarcoat the losing there, but again, maybe if we vent together, it'll feel a little better there. So we'll look at that. And of course, now that we, at least the Yankees are in the offseason mode, already got some contract moving and going on there. And of course, that's with Cody Bellinger opting out of his player option for 2026. So we'll kind of examine that. We're not going to get into a whole thing of like the whole list of free agents of who should go, who should stay, who the Yankees should keep. I mean, we got plenty of weeks to go. We have a whole offseason ahead of us there. So we'll get to that. But of course, Bellinger's the one who's kind of, pulled the switch on that one. So I guess we'll at least look at the Bellinger situation. And probably if you've been on, social media, X or Instagram, I'm sure you've seen this sort of meme going around with Joe Torre with a kind of really harsh statement about the Yankees in terms of, them being entitled and not hungry and all this stuff. Well, turns out that meant exactly what was being said there. It might be a little smattering of fake news and the whole thing. So we'll kind of give you the backstory of that whole thing. And of course, we've got some other news regarding some Yankee fans, and a few stuff going on both games in 3 and 4, not being classy at all. So in case you missed any of that stuff, we'll kind of call out what happened there. Again, you lose is one thing, but again, you lose and do some stupid stuff like that. Does not make your organization, does not make your fan base look good. So fully on all that good stuff. But before we get started, there's the audio podcast version of the show, Section 420 Talkin Yankees, and this is probably exactly why you want to subscribe. We have a whole winter ahead of us, a whole off season. Bunch of free agency, hot stove, and trades, and who should go, who should stay, and all the analyzing, and some stuff might come in the fly in the window we're not expecting there, and maybe just try some fun stuff, some Yankee history, try to maybe some stadium experiences I'll try to share with you. Make sure you're an audio podcast subscriber. Again, Section 420 Yankees, wherever you get your favorite podcast, and of course you're watching here on YouTube. You had the whole 2025. Now, there's a couple of months left in the year there, so you got a shot. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, and if you're watching on TV, same thing. Subscribe to the audio podcast, and then supplement that with the YouTube episode. You'll have everything for a very warm and comfortable winter. So with Game 4, the Yankees losing 5-2, that ended their season, and of course they got bounced out of the ALDS. 3 games to 1 there, where again it was only really competitive there. If you only look at Game 3, that meant the first 2 games they absolutely get smoked. They bring it back to the Bronx, and then because we'll examine each game 3 and 4 separately a little later on there. But just in terms of brief there, really Game 3 we had only a little happiness, a little hope there. Got a huge home run from Aaron Judge there. We figured, what, maybe we could get Game 4 there. Toronto's throwing a bullpen game. They're almost kind of waving the white flag. Almost like, all right, take this game. We'll see up in Toronto where we, pretty much own you. Kind of felt it was going to be that way, but of course not there. The Yankees stopped short there in Game 4. And it's just kind of disappointing fashion because, the Yankees got off to a really good start this season there. And then obviously we had their troubles during the summer there. And that's kind of where, Toronto kind of creeped in there. Took a good hold of the AL East for most of the while there, and the Yankees clawed their way back in September, but unfortunately ran out of time there. Had to settle for a tie in the AL East with 94 wins, but of course Toronto had the tiebreaker over them. You always kind of felt like the Yankees were better than them, and maybe it could be a little just because maybe I'm a Yankee fan to see it that way, but you just kind of felt the Yankees were the better team, and they still at some point would be able to overcome them, beat them, just for the fact that just look at the roster. Let's look at the rosters of both teams there, and the fact going into the series, again, they were without Bo Bichette, one of the best hitters, without Chris Bassett, who, pretty decent pitcher, without Max Scherzer. Now, Max Scherzer's a little bit over the hill there, so obviously that might have been a plus, actually, if he did pitch and the Yankees could have rocked him. But nevertheless, they went in there shorthanded, did not have Bichette, and it basically starting Kevin Gausman, a rookie Trey Yesavage, who, again, turned out to be pretty darn good himself. But, again, the guy only had 3 starts before going to that game. You kind of fully expected it. And then from there, the rest of their starters were for games 3 and 4 at the time were undecided. So the fact that Toronto went in there with they didn't even have a full pitching rotation. The only kind of competent starter who you kind of knew was Kevin Gausman there. Other than that, you didn't know any of these guys, or there was undecided there. So you really liked your chances in the series there. But again, this looked like a tale of two teams. Hard to say, is there one team better than the other? I know, obviously, we all know Buck Williams, the Toronto broadcaster there, kind of said the Yankees aren't a good team. I can't really say that. I mean, both teams ended up with 94 wins. So if the Yankees aren't a good team and you also have 94 wins, what does it say about you? Or is it back to this quote, the Yankees had a bad week, were they taxed? So the Yankees had to play those 3 games against Boston. Obviously, Toronto was able to use that week to rest up a little bit. Did that have anything to do with it? Maybe. Again, the Yankees starting pitches look a little fried. I mean, you didn't get a decent start from any of them. I mean, Luis Hill got yanked out of there right away. So, obviously, it's kind of a weird situation there. You couldn't leave him in too long because he hadn't pitched in a while. I mean, he could have maybe just turned it on in that game and maybe could have stuck with him. But Boone went with the early hook there just because, again, he gave up 2 home runs early within like the first 5 batters there, and I guess they said you want to keep the game at that point. Fried gave you absolutely nothing. Carlos Rodon gave you absolutely nothing as well there. So Yankees could have got a comparable start in that until you got to Cam Schlitter. At least kept the Yankees game in a while there, but unfortunately some bad play, mainly by Jazz, which we'll get into, pretty much booted the season away, as would say. The Yankees at the point only down 2-1, possibly had a couple innings maybe, or you would need a 2-run home run or something like that to swing the game, but unfortunately put the Yankees in a 4-1 hole, and that's all you said. And it's kind of left with this little bit of lump of coal in your stomach where you felt, is that it? I mean, we could have done more. This team felt like there was something to finally click in September after kind of being lost for the whole summer there. Things were starting to finally click. Even of all people, Devin Williams was starting to actually look good there. I mean, a lot of things were coming together there, and for this to end like that, against a team where, again, you look up and down the lineup there, and we'll go through some of the numbers there. We used to figure, how do we lose this team? Okay, we know George Springer, we know Vlad Guerrero Jr. Again, Alejandro Kirk's a good, decent player there. But you look up and down the lineup, like, Varshno and Banger and Miley. Who are these guys? You really didn't expect to lose it in this fashion. And the fact they had no starting rotation at all, really. All that being said, the Yankees bested, and knocked out of 4 games there. So probably again, even though Game 3 was probably probably be a future classic game, probably one of the better Yankee postseason wins in a long time. Kind of took it back to the old days there a little bit. But again, this is kind of one of the bitter losses, in a while. You didn't feel worse about this than even back in 2022 when they got swept by the Houston Astros. You just felt like, look, Astros were the better team. They won. They always own the Yankees. You kind of figured it was going to happen there. It was annoying, but it wasn't the worst thing in the world. Even even like 2019 when they also lost to the Astros again. The Astros kind of got the big lead. That's when they had Cole and Verlander there. They were clearly probably the better team. Again, you didn't like losing to Houston, but at least you can comprehend it a little bit there. This is probably a loss that you really can't comprehend. Just kind of leaves a little bit of this bit of sour grapes, a little bitterness to you. Figure, we were probably the better team just by smudge a little, but to lose like that, real heartbreaking fashion. So what we'll do next year, we'll kind of look at games 3 and 4. So we got game 3, I guess, the good times we'll live through, and of course game 4, that kind of went out with a whimper, you call it like that there. And let's look at both games there. Maybe some of the, I don't know what moves they could have made in game 4 to make a difference there. Again, really what it came down to is that blown play by Jazz, which really kicked the season away. But at that point, that might have been 2-1, might have been a hole anyway, because that offense wasn't scoring anything. And with the Yankees dropping the first 2 games, it obviously made game 3 a win or go home situation, which I wasn't really concerned with because the Yankees were almost finished in that situation in the previous wild card round against Boston. I mean, as soon as they lost the first game, the next 2 were do and die games. So I don't think the Yankees were feeling pressure like that. Again, you have a lot of veterans on the team. You're a home team. You just been to the World Series last year, so I don't think the Yankees were. I really felt that at least come back and make this a series. Didn't figure, guarantee that, hey, they'd win definitely, but at least you felt good about the 2 games at home. But again, game 3 didn't actually work out as you thought it would. With Carlos Rodon on the mound, you figure, at least carry them a little bit longer. But he fell immediately into a 5-1 hole there off the bat. He pretty much had nothing for the Yankees. Now with him, I can't blame him too much. I mean, he threw the most innings he has ever had in his career this season there, so that might have taxed him a little. I mean, he really pretty much had nothing in that game. And if you just remember how the game it was, he was kind of moseying around on the pitcher's mound. He was kind of slow to home plate. Like, it was almost like he wanted to avoid pitching, which is not a good sign there. So kind of hard to really pinpoint what happened with him. Again, he might have just burnt out from a long season. Plus, again, he did pitch in the previous series against Boston there. Again, he had a decent series. I mean, went 6 innings, gave up 3 earned runs. It was okay. Kind of battled and grinded it out, as they said there. But again, maybe it was too much a quick turnaround time. Who knows? But he had absolutely nothing in that game. And again, before you know it, the Yankees were behind 5-1, then 6-1 there. And at this point, you figure the season's over, which you couldn't even believe there. But then again, the Yankees engineer quite a miraculous comeback there. Put a couple of runs up on the board, bringing the score at least to 6-3. And gave Judge finally a postseason moment that people have been waiting for a long time, because we know what happened in Game 1 there with the bases loaded against Gorsman. Absolutely just swung out the pitch way out of the zone. Very uncharacteristic for him. He usually has a very good eye at the plate. And it wasn't like this was a borderline pitch where he kind of he had no choice to take it. I mean, it was kind of a splitter that was way outside. I mean, some swinging looking off balance. Again, I haven't seen Judge really take a swing like that almost all season there. So who knows? They will say, well, did the moment get to him? We don't know that. But unfortunately, in that situation there, bases loaded, that game of points only 2-0. Again, the Yankees could have really done something in that inning instead of just settling for one run. Maybe could have turned the tide of the whole series. Hard to say there, because again, the Toronto bats kept on fire for the rest of that game as well as Game 2. But nevertheless, pivotal moment. Judge took a lot of flack for that over the next few days there, but it seems like had his redemption in that game. Again, when the Yankees brought it to 6-3. Now, a little bit of a fluky, Wells had a pop-up to third base, and that night, and actually I was at the game, the winds were swirling there, and Banger at third base there kind of misplayed the ball, dropped in. Kind of remind you a little bit of Luis Castillo there, that that infamous Mets game there when A-Rod hit that mile-high pop-up, and then the ball dropped in, and to Sharon as scored there, the winning run in that Subway Series, that was back in 2009. Very similar to that, like you see him, struggling a little bit at third base, the ball drops in. So kind of Wells got on base, a little bit of a fluke. So the whole thing was a little bit flukely, but nevertheless, 2 runners on it, and Judge up against Luis Varland. Guy throws 100 miles per hour. He had Judge dead to rights at 0-2. And at this point, you figure this guy would have maybe throw one high, throw one in the dirt. I mean, you got a few pitches to spoil. Threw a pitch on the inside, and Judge is kind of at a bit of an awkward swing. It's just kind of, again, a lot of people said only Judge could really power that ball out. So kind of crazy there on 0-2 to get enough of the ball, enough bat on the ball there. Able to sort of muscle it to left field, hits right off the foul pole, and the Yankees tied 3-3. The stadium goes absolutely crazy. Again, I was there jumping up and down. The place was shaking. There was, little packets of mustard going to the place and all sorts of things thrown in the air there. So really cool moment. That's probably the only thing you get out of this series was that moment there for the Yankees. And then the Jazz also adding a home run soon after that, put them ahead 7-6 there. And the Yankee bullpen rested away, which really of this whole thing, I guess only some people could hold their head up a little bit in this series was one Aaron Judge. I mean, early on he was hitting, not only in this series, but the previous season. Now, there weren't all home runs there, so people say, hey, what Judge is doing. But average-wise, he was getting his hits there. Cam Schlittler, who at least gave the Yankees a decent effort in Game 4, and the Yankee bullpen. Now, you have to say minus Louis Weaver, because, we had the blow-up he had in Game 1 there, when the Yankees at least had the game within 2-1 there. But nevertheless, the Yankee bullpen collectively was probably the only thing you could hold. Those only 4 entries really. They could hold their head, 3 entries that could really hold their head up higher in the series. But nevertheless, the Yankee bullpen able to keep the score by 7-6. Yankees tack on a couple more runs and take that one game 9-6 there. And I guess that's your lone victory. But after that, you feel like, all right, great, we had that win. The whole idea was like, let's get a win in the series. Let's get Cam Schlittler on the mound for Game 4 there, and then you like your chances to take it back to Toronto. Now, you feel like you may not win in Toronto because, the Yankees got rocked in the first 2 games and we're getting rocked all season, but at least get it to a Game 4. And it felt like if you could do that, then maybe, Cam Schlittler could throw another good game. You can't expect him to duplicate what he did against Boston there, but again, if you give a couple of start, the Yankees against a bullpen game, against the Toronto bullpen, should be able to score enough runs there to at least get them to Game 5 there. But of course, that all didn't happen there. But at least for Game 3, again, the Yankees just gave it, and Judge gave kind of that one great moment there. And again, that's a game you'll probably see, they'll replay on like whatever the Yes Classics, whatever they do like that there. But unfortunately, this is only bugaboo about it there. It comes in a losing effort. It's almost like the Tino and Scott Brocious home runs in the 2001 World Series. Some great moments there, but of course, you lost that World Series, so it's like, it's great, but nevertheless, at least Judge has his moment there. At least Judge gets that monkey off his back. So, in the next couple of seasons ahead, if hopefully the Yankees are involved in the postseason there, he doesn't have to hit, Judge never hit a big one in the postseason, which not a kind of true. I mean, he's had a couple of big hits. I mean, Class A last season, both him and Giancarlo Stanton went back-to-back in that Game 3. I know the Yankees lost that game in extra innings there, but, that kind of was a clutch home run as well there. So that whole idea before that he could never hit in the clutch or could never hit in the postseason was a little overstated there. But nevertheless, that's such a big home run, so at least quiet people a little bit. But again, but as soon as you have that great moment in Game 3, reality sets in as you have to go to Game 4, and that's the game you have to win, at least get the series back up to Toronto. If the Yankees are entering Game 4, man, both the team and the fans had to like their chances. Again, you have Cam Schlittler on the mound, who just threw probably one of the best postseason games, in baseball history. A week before against the Boston Red Sox, you can't expect that same effort, but you like at least that versus what Toronto was thrown at you, which was a bullpen game. And to me, I know they'll say, well, we had everything strategically. I mean, that's basically them, saying we don't have a starting rotation. here's the white flag. You know what? We're probably going to lose this game. We'll see in Toronto. And even all that in mind, the Yankee offense, completely didn't even show up. And you got a home run by McMahon in there in the game. And, of course, a late inning run that they kind of scratched in garbage time. But for those conditions there, for the Yankee offense to only muster up one run before the thing, blew open there on their faces there, quite disturbing there. So that's what made all the promise and all the positivity had to start the game, which made it such a bad ending there because, again, everything was lined up to at least take it to a Game 5. If you go to a Game 5 on the road and then you lose it, whatever, there's only so much you can do there. But to lose it in that way to this team, to your rival, and allow them to dance and pop the champagne in your clubhouse and on your field there, really, this is pretty a real bad slap in the face there. And again, this is why it probably makes, at least the end of this season probably worse than 2022 or 2021 or 2020 there. When maybe say maybe we lost to a better team and just the situation wasn't right there and they had better players and everything was lined up more. This one, again, this the way to lose it in this way in this game is that way. It just makes it really a pill to swallow there. But for Cam Schlittler, it's kind of what you expected. He was going to be good because he was kind of the Superman in that game against Boston. You couldn't expect him to do the same thing, but again, he at least kept the team in the game within the 7th inning there. So for his part there, he did his job. I know if you get the first inning run there early on, thanks to George Springer, a double, and then later Guerrero would knock him in there. But other than that, kept Toronto off the board, kept the game close there. McMahon, I had mentioned before, would get his solo home run, but that's all the Yankee offense can muster against, again, a bullpen game. And I know it's hard, they're bringing in different guys and all throwing top speed like that and giving us different arm angles there, but still, it's a bullpen game. I mean, if this, all you could do is just get one solo home run out of all that there, and then maybe, you throw a running garbage time later on there. Pretty disturbing. But again, that's why this makes it such a bad loss there after all the hype and all the positivity you had in Game 3. But really, this game was lost in the 7th inning. And, of course, you had Clement on first base there. Now you had a ground ball by Jimenez, went to Jazz there at second base. And it was a play that, at the very least, if you couldn't turn the double play, at least you could have got one out of the whole thing. I mean, it was a very makeable play. I would say probably 95% of the time the second baseman makes that play. A little up the middle towards the bag there, but Jazz boots it. The ball goes under the glove there. So the guy who was talking the most there about the Yankees being the best team and we're stepping on people's necks and all that stuff from a couple of weeks ago, again, when you talk like that, the ball is going to find you, and the ball found him at the worst position. Ball goes under there, goes into the outfield there, and at that point now you have first and third. And, Boone, I think, maybe took, Cam Schlittler, he rode him as long as he could there. You can see he did not want to go to that bullpen because, again, you can only trust maybe 2 or 3 guys out of that bullpen. Bednar, maybe one of them, maybe Fernando Cruz. Again, they used a lot of guys in Game 3 there, so they need to length out of Schlittler, and they kind of that's what he gave them there. But they eventually had no choice at that point. Went to Devin Williams. And Devin Williams, who getting a little bit better lately, and I got to say for both the Boston series and the Toronto series, at least wasn't terrible. I'm not saying, I'm not dying to bring him back for 2026. I mean, I think we saw enough of him blowing a lot of the games early on there. I just don't think he's comfortable here in the Yankee uniform and everything there, so I'm okay with him leaving. But nevertheless, did his job there. But of course, in this game, first gets one big strikeout of Springer there. We're like, hey, now you got 2 outs there. Maybe he could get out of it. Now, the only problem with that strikeout, Jimenez stole a second base there, so now runners at second and third. But still, you're just 1 out away from getting out of that jam there. But unfortunately, lays a pitch over the plate there. Now, it wasn't really a terrible pitch. I meant, it wasn't over the plate there, but it was kind of far outside the zone there. But Nathan Lukes just tomahawked it into left field, just kind of served it there. And, of course, runners going on 2 outs there. Both runners score easily. Yankees behind 4-1, and you can pretty much say goodbye to the season at that point there. Again, some people have criticized, well, maybe Devin Williams could have thrown a better pitch. I don't know. Again, it wasn't a terrible pitch. I mean, it was also just a good piece of hitting. But again, that all got set up by the Jazz booting a ball there at second base. And again, I just can't remember too many Yankee games to go back to the good old days of the late 90s and early 2000s. I know you don't want to compare organizations there, but I can't remember any big major errors that really stands off. The only one I can really think of was in '98 with Chuck Knobloch, that Game 2 against Cleveland home there. Again, it was ball hit a play in the back, and instead of picking up the ball and throw it home, he's sitting there arguing with the umpire. I mean, that's kind of the only bonehead play I could think from that era there. And again, it was all for naught there because the Yankees came back in that series, won that series, and also won the World Series. Again, that was the '98, one of the greatest teams of all time there. But other than that, you didn't see the Yankees making big errors like that in the postseason. Again, Jazz making a huge error there at that spot there. And again, that really would cost the whole series for the Yankees, because at least if they could have gotten in that jam at the point, 7th inning, 2-1, at that point you could possibly tie the game there and possibly even win it there on a bloop and a blast there. But when you're down 4-1, this the way this Yankee team was not hitting. inning, and again, Toronto just kept sending one guy after another each inning. They had a bullpen there, and the Yankees really had nothing to offer there. That's pretty much all they wrote. The Yankees had a little bit rally going there in the 7th inning where possibly if Trent Grisham could have got on, you could have had a bases-loaded situation with Judge coming up, but Grisham striking out in a big spot there. Again, and he was kind of lousy in the series. We want to go through a lot of these guys' numbers there. And I guess, and the game was 5-1. We finally saw Dominguez, who I don't know why this guy was on any postseason roster, but they didn't want to use the guy. But nevertheless, he got a double. So, hey, congratulations for him getting a postseason hit there. Judge would really knock him in to make 5-2, but still, you felt like the Yankees had lost that game already. You can't expect miracle comebacks 2 nights in a row. I know the Yankees did it in the 2001, as I mentioned before, with the Tino and Barocious back-to-back nights like that in the 9th inning there. But, Judge, Judge kind of pulled the miracle card out in Game 3. You're probably not going to get that again there in Game 4, and unfortunately, the Yankees fall short there. And again, Cam Schlitter did his job, Judge did his job himself there, but the rest of the Yankee offense was a no-show in this game. And then Jazz, again, who liked to run his mouth and postings on X throughout the whole season there, ball comes to him in a big spot there, and he boots it there. And now he's the guy you have to consider, do you want him part of your club moving forward there? Obviously, he's on the contract, not going to get too much into contract stuff there. But again, a decision to make. I mean, is that a guy you want on your it has a 30-30 season for you? That's great. That gets you to postseason. But how do you play in the actual postseason? And he did not play well at all, though. So something for the Yankees to consider. And of course, now we all know they go home. Toronto moves on. So they're going to ask yourself, what happened to these two teams? Obviously it looked like almost like a mismatch on the field a little bit. Other than, you had your Game 3 there, but the first 2 games, the Yankees get their doors blown off. Game 4 there, tight a little bit, but again, ultimately never really felt the Yankees really had a shot in the game, even though when it was tied 1-1. Figure maybe a little bit, but once they felt like 2-1, the 2-1 almost felt like 10-1 there. So you figure what was going on both teams? And again, Toronto with their bats were really hot in the first game. So we have Judge, we have Bellinger, we have Trent Grisham. We had the 30 home run season. What happened here? So we're doing the kind of, I guess, the postmortem there. It really had this but it's the same old story with this, again, the Yankee organization is going back for 25 years almost there, that, you have this great team during the regular season. They hit home runs. They have some great stats. You have an MVP season by Judge. Grisham, career high 30-something home runs. You got a good season by Bellinger. You got a breakout season by Ben Rice. All this good stuff. And then when it comes to the postseason, womp womp. And it's a team like Toronto who, when they break camp, then you look at the roster. The Yankees could never break camp with a roster that Toronto has. This wouldn't be acceptable to media, wouldn't be acceptable to fans. However, a roster of guys like that just hit contact, kind of boring there, those are the ones that seem to excel in the playoffs. And the Yankees with all the home runs and all the hoopla and the 30-30 season by Jazz almost seemed all for naught there. And again, they all come up empty in the postseason season. And so it's kind of always the same story with the organizations there. So kind of look at the batting averages and numbers there. Again, it kind of tells you the whole thing. So we'll go to our stats cam here, or sophisticated stats cam is the tablet here. And just look at how the Yankees hit in the series. Grisham, 138. 138. I don't know if that's possible. Again, Judge, the only guy who could hold his head up, hit 500. Again, he did his job more than enough there. Bellinger, who had a good season for the Yankees, hit 214. Now, I think he was bothered by that bad foot, which seemed to bother him during the Boston series. That's when he kind of ran from home from second there. So, and you saw him limping around at various points during the Toronto season. So I don't know if he was fully healthy, but still, he only hit 214. Stanton, who gave it an unbelievable postseason last year, not even close to that. It was pretty much a non-factor. Only hit 192. Just had an RBI in Game 2 in garbage time, and again helped a little bit in Game 3 there, at least to bring the Yankees back from that 6-1 deficit. But nevertheless, he gave you no power this series whatsoever, and hit a ball off the wall during the Boston series, and luckily to get thrown out at second base for that one. Chisholm, who again ran his mouth and booted the play there at second base in Game 4, only hit 182. Ben Rice, who again really gave you nothing this postseason except maybe, I guess we'll give him good credit for the 2-run home run in Game 2, hit 222. Then you got Wells, 227. Volpe, who was absolutely terrible. I think he struck out like 7 times between Games 3 and 4, only hit 192. And then McMahon, he's someone that I guess can hold his head up a little bit, a couple good defensive plays in the Boston series, and he hit 286 and at least a home run. So I guess maybe he kind of did his job. But again, look at this guy. Grisham, 138. Bellinger, 214. Stanton, 192. Chisholm, 182. Rice, 222. Wells, 227. Volpe, 192. So this is like about 200 and less there of a batting average. And again, if you're not making contact and singles, just look what Toronto did. How many pitches did they foul off? And, I know Guerrero hit the big home run in Game 3 that put them ahead 2-0 there. But it's not like they came to Yankee Stadium and hit the ball all over the place in terms of going over the wall. It was a single. How many seeing eye singles went past the third base bag? Whether McMahon there or Rosario's there? I counted at least 5 there. Just little singles, little bloops, singles. single, 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 single. Again, that's what wins your game. And again, of course, Jimenez there in Game 4 in a situation when Williams struck out Springer, steals, goes from first to second base, steals a base even though Springer struck out there, put himself in scoring position where Nathan Lukes, again, just a little contact into left field there, a little bloop there, scores 2 runs there. So, to get singles, contact hitting, good base running, smart heads-up base running there. Again, Yankees had none of that. They seem like always waiting for the home run, waiting for the big moment. Maybe try to sneak a walk there and have Trent Grisham. Yeah, he took some close 3-2 calls during the whole series, but he also got punched out a lot as well there. It seemed like he didn't want to swing the bat there. He was just hoping to get walked there. So you just see that tale of two cities where, look on the Toronto side, their hitters, Springer, he's the only guy that didn't do well, but again, he's been a Yankee name since he hit 176. But Nathan Lukes, 333. Guerrero had an unbelievable series, 529. Barger, 333. Varshino, you're like, who the hell is this Varshino guy? 438. Miles Straw, 400. And Clement, who actually killed the Yankees, 643. So you guys hitting 500, 600, well over 300 versus the Yankee hitters, most of them hitting well under 200 there. And again, that's the tale of the two cities there. Now again, when you start the season, you look at the Toronto roster, you look at the Yankee roster, it seems like night and day. Well, the Yankees should be much better there. But when you actually get to the postseason, when you actually get into the good pitches, the pitches that are not going to give you too many good things to hit there, the Yankee big sluggers are going to come up short. And a team like Toronto, someone like Varshino and Clement are going to kill you. And that's what happened in this series there. So I know the Yankees have to go in the offseason there and kind of rethink this whole thing with the lineup. Do we get away from someone like Volpe, who's great, hits you 19 home runs, but he's a 200 hitter and he gave you really not too much at all in the playoffs there. They're going to stick with these guys. So those are the type of decisions the Yankees have to make there when they have to make improvements at the roster. Again, have to get better contact hitting there because unfortunately it cost the Yankees in the series. And mentioned earlier, we kind of hold off on the who should say, who should go episode, but of course, first blood was drawn. But again, you have to blame Cody Bellinger because he's the one that did it, opting out of his deal for 2026. He had a player option for $25 million for next year. Now, will the Yankees bring him back? And now we'll kind of analyze. But he's 30 years old, had a good season for the Yankees, 272, 29 home runs, 98 RBIs, and an OPS of 814. And he was known as a 9+ defender. Basically means he's a good defender. Second, only Wells, who was an 11+ defender. Now, my take is I don't think the Yankees are going to give him a long-term deal there. I mean, he's 30 years old. He only took a 3-year deal previously with the Cubs because he was coming off a bad ending in the Dodgers deal. It was almost sort of a team-friendly deal there. Now he's 30 years old. It's probably his last really big contract he's going to get. He's going to be looking for the long term. I don't think the Yankees are going to invest a 5-year deal in the guy, even though he's a solid, decent player for the Yankees, as well as versatility in the outfield there. But again, I don't think the Yankees are going to look at 5 years into him. And plus, you do have Spencer Jones coming up probably next year to the majors there. So the Yankees are forced to. And so that's one decision the Yankees make. But so Cody Bellinger, I think he was a good Yankee. Obviously, like what your father did in 2000, big play there. But nevertheless, his time in the pinstripes probably done. And in closing, kind of want to address the comments that supposedly Joe Torre made. I'm sure you saw the meme, the whole thing that, the Yankees, you can't just show up, wear the uniform, and sort of you can't be entitled, you got to be hungry there. Seemed like he didn't actually make that quote there, and actually stemmed from an interview. It was a phone interview he did with Ian O'Connor from The Athletic. And he was kind of talking about how many Yankee fans have been spoiled just because from all the success they had, from, again, those are the George Steinbrenner years when it was called World Series of Bust, and kind of said, how fans have been spoiled with that. So, when you have a team that's not, doesn't go to the World Series or win the World Series there, they get really disappointed there. So his comments went towards that. Somehow that got mutated into this whole thing where it told out how this Yankee team felt entitled. It didn't seem like he said that at all there. So kind of got lost in a lot of translations and got stretched out there. But speaking of fans, of course, Yankee fans not acting good during this ALDS. Of course, we know the situation in Game 3. 2 fans running on the field there. Well, yeah, it wasn't entertaining, but not cool, especially when you're losing 6-1 there. You just look like you're sore losers and kind of just drunk out of your mind there. And, of course, the situation in Game 4, supposedly someone threw a beer at Guerrero's family there in the stands where, again, at that point, you just look like a sore loser. You give all Yankee fans a bad look with that one. So, you know what, that's let the Philly fans do that. Keep that stuff in Philadelphia. Don't do that in New York.